Meanwhile, joining us in the studio today, the Battle Creek City Manager, Rebecca Fleury. Good morning.
Good morning, Richard.
And our City Planner, Christine Zuzga, is here as well. Hello there.
Hello.
Welcome in today. We're talking about the capital improvement program in the city of Battle Creek, which sounds impressive. It's millions and millions of dollars, and it's kind of fun. You get to decide what it is that you want, right? Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, that's very fair, Richard. Yes, it actually is a wonderful planning document for us, required by the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. I believe that's correct. Mm-hmm. Chris is basically our CIP guru at the city as the planner, because it takes a lot of people to put this together, from Chris's team and her division and her department to the Planning Commission to other city staff, and as well as then finally to the City Commission. So it is a planning document to put in place where we're headed to care for city assets and to plan for the capital needs that we have. A city that's 44 square miles and 50+ thousand people have a lot of capital needs. Mm-hmm. And so it's good that we have this document to guide us as we move forward. Knowing, though, that we don't have $212 million or approximately in the bank, but we need to have a plan for how to get these things done, because while I guess some call it a wish list, these are the things that need to get done to care for both our physical and kind of structural needs in the city.
So how do you decide where to stop? I mean, you talk about the number of things you could do with this, and maybe we don't have the cash for everything, but how do you know how far to go?
I'm going to turn that one to Chris.
Yep.
This year we started doing a priority scoring for each of the different projects to really evaluate all of the different requests based on the 8 assets and the mapping that we have for all of those, to try to determine what would be the priority projects that fit into those goals. And so that's really the first step in trying to make that decision. We also have to look at what are impending needs for infrastructure. For example, you had mentioned a roof for City Hall. Yeah. That's not something that can be delayed too long, and so that's going to be more of a priority.
Yeah, I threw that up before we went on as an example of what might be on this list. So a scoring, how do you do that, like 1 to 5 or something, and then assign those numbers?
Well, I will tell you, this is a new process for us, Richard. So you know that the city is embarking on priority-based budgeting, and that has a very integral scoring system as its component, one of the components to get to our city services. We have scored all of our city services. So it has a series of program attributes as well as a scoring system, as Chris said, compared to our community results. Those, 8 things that the community and the commission have said are the highest priority for us. And so we use that to score these projects against. So, a lot of things with police and fire related tend to score very high when we look at, community safety, the health and feeling safety in the community. But other things like streets and water and sewer projects also score very high because, they touch so many aspects of our community. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, without going through all of that scoring criteria, that's basically how we do it. And this is new. Priority-based budgeting doesn't require we score capital in that way. We decided to be the guinea pigs for them. And we're the first in the country to apply their scoring system to a capital program. And it's still a work in progress. We tried it on a limited basis this year. And we got a lot of input from the Planning Commission, great suggestions from the Planning Commission and the City Commission on how we can improve upon that going forward as to how it can be helpful. Because really, they're the ones responsible for the capital improvement program. The Planning Commission needs to make sure that it's aligned with not only our master plan, but our priority-based budgeting plans, and so does the Commission, who ultimately makes that decision.
So we'll try and understand that a little better when we come back in just a minute on WBCK. We're talking about the Battle Creek Capital Improvement Program with City Manager Rebecca Fleury and City Planner Christine Zuzga. So, okay, you got these priorities in the priority budgeting. So let's say the scoring is from, 1 to 5, and you have a bunch of 5s. Now what do you do?
So first of all, just to mention that we had an interdepartmental team that really went through every project and scored them. So it was very unbiased. We all, every department had a representative there to help do the scoring. And so that really helped to make it pretty fair and equitable across all the different projects. And then it's a 6-year plan. So the projects are spread out over a 6-year period of time. If then something is a 5, we then have to decide, and maybe Rebecca can speak to this more, but we have to then decide what is the most priority and what do we actually have funding for in that first fiscal year.
Yeah, and that probably is no easy task.
No, it really isn't. But you also know that we also have to be prepared for those unexpected things that happen during the year. Because that was a really good question, and I can't remember which meeting, about what happens if something's not in the plan and then it might happen.
Yeah.
Well, we deal with that, as a budget amendment, or, we bring that in front of the commission to consider on an as-needed basis. But you're exactly right. As we find funding for the capital program, then it will come forward to solidify it as an actual project, because we don't know what maybe the grant priorities will be throughout this particular year. So if a grant funding or if a grant opportunity is available for some of these projects, we will go after that, and then it might move to a different, it might to a completed or to be completed rather than just kind of sitting as a placeholder until funds can be identified.
I see. So you have this 6-year list, and then it's prioritized in terms of what years you might be able to do these things, and then it's prioritized again within those years. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you mentioned police and fire and safety. Those things are high in the priority list. So let's say there's something else that's not police or fire. If we stuck with the roof example, for example, we don't need a roof at City Hall, but if we use that as an example.
Thank you, Richard. We don't need a roof at City Hall right now.
you say, gee, that roof could leak at some point. So where does that fit? So it's below in the priorities of funding, below the safety and security issue, fire and safety, but it's higher than, say, the front lawn at City Hall or something. I don't know.
That's a good point. And it's one of the things I think that as we figure out the proper scoring techniques, we're still figuring that out. I think things that have, that are imminent danger,
yes.
For example, a roof that starts to leak or, something of that nature, I think that would probably receive some additional criteria, then it would elevate that, for that purpose. And so, we still have some work to do in that particular scoring area.
Fair enough. In a moment, we'll pick up where we leave off and talk a little bit about what the priorities are in the year or two to come that we can identify so far, and how this process moves forward from here. That's coming up in just a minute. Rebecca Fleury and Christine Zuzga here from the city of Battle Creek. We're talking about capital improvement programs. So this, we presume, follows an assembly process, and then it goes through the usual channels after this, the city commission approval and so on, right?
Yes, the statute actually requires it to go to the Planning Commission first.
Okay.
Their primary purpose is to review it for consistency with the master plan. If there are certain areas of town that we want to remain undeveloped, for example, the southwest corner, then we shouldn't be extending water and sewer to that area. Mm-hmm. So they want to review the capital improvements plan to make sure that there's no projects in there that would be inconsistent with any of the goals and objectives of the master plan. And the master plan also calls for, or could call for, specific projects that would be recommended to accomplish some of the goals in the plan. And so they can review it too to help try to initiate some of those requests if necessary. So that's the first step.
So give us some examples of the priorities that are on it right now.
Well, I wish I could say that everything that's scored like a priority 1 will be funded, and that's just not the way that the capital program works.
Yep.
There's a couple sections in there. We have some identified capital projects that already have earmarked funding for it. So we receive street funds from the state of Michigan, and our water and sewer program helps support some of those capital projects too. So when you look at the document, for those that don't deal with it every day, kind of like we do, it can be a bit confusing because we have some projects in there that are already funded and planned for this coming year as far as a construction season. But then there's this other list, and there are several things that scored priority 1 that the funding has yet not been identified. And some of those have to do with facilities that we've had a lot of discussions on, police and fire facilities. We have some parks projects, those types of things. While, it's important that our elected officials and our planning commission members know that they're priority 1s, and that, those are the areas we're probably putting more efforts in to try to find funding. We have yet to identify those. So it's not that they're not important in this kind of trial period using the priority-based budgeting scoring. We have 1s, we just haven't identified the funding. So we kind of look at that first. And again, we don't know kind of what grant funding will be available, some other special programs that will come out from different funding sources that we might be able to tap into. Is there some matching programs that we can use, which are some of the things we're exploring for fire facilities? And then just a police facility, that will be the commission's determination on whether we just simply fund that in a different manner with a bond or something of that nature.
I see. Right. So the money notwithstanding, what are some things on the list that we'd like to do?
Well, I think police and fire facilities are high on the priority. We have some parks projects. We have some street projects, but most of the street projects are funded. Also, you'll see the capital program or projects as recommended by the Tax Increment Finance Authority, the BC TIFA, and so those have yet to be determined whether they will occur in this construction season or they'll be pushed out. Am I forgetting some of the other projects?
There's well, we're talking about hundreds of millions here that would add up to if we had it all. Is there something fun on that list?
It's all fun, Richard. All of it is fun.
I don't know, downtown bowling alley or something. I'm just,
No,
just
it depends on who you ask. I mean, we do have some improvements needed at Bailey Park. There are some of our parks that need it, but there's also some probably not so fun stuff, but important to us is like phone systems, technology upgrades. As we look at, how servers reach the end of their life.
Oh, boy, that changes so fast.
Exactly. So, we call those all fun. And but maybe to you, you might not have that fun. And, one of the biggest things we have on there, and most people don't like to talk about it, is we have a lot of work to do out at the wastewater treatment plant because there's some energy standards changing, which means we have to kind of reevaluate how we determine that service. And, when we talk about things like solids handling and sludge cake projects, might not be fun to some, but if you ask the people at the wastewater treatment plant, that is wonderful to them.
Right. That's an example of like the gutters on your house falling off or something. You sort of roll your eyes and say, okay, I got to spend the money on that. When standards change, you're sort of pushed into it, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And we never know. A lot of times those types of energy standards come out of the federal government. Now, I like to say they do give us a pretty good lead time to plan for that. But when you're talking about multi-million-dollar changes, that's why the capital program is so important, so we can phase into that. So it's not just like, oh, yeah, one hit for $8 million. We can plan to do, phase 1, phase 2, and get to the completed project to meet that standard.
Mm-hmm. So what's the time frame here now? Planning Commission gets it back eventually, and then City Commission. What kind of time frame are we looking at?
It went to Planning Commission last month, and then it went to City Commission last night, actually, where they adopted the 6-year plan.
So it's done now, then?
The plan has been adopted, yes.
Okay. Very good. So we'll continue to follow this. There's I presume, a tracking of how this goes, and everybody keeps track of that, right?
This is something that we actually have to do every year. So it's a 6-year plan, but we do it for the 6 years following. So it's required. It's work that's done pretty much the entire year between the different departments and planning what their projects will be, finance department trying to put everything together, planning, trying to then get it to Planning Commission. So it's a really lengthy process that we work on throughout the year. And that does require a lot of checks and balances with the departments and the projects that they're working on.
All right. If somebody listening wants to see what was passed, it's probably on the city website someplace, right?
Yes, most definitely. It was part of the commission agenda packet last night, and it will be posted if it's not already on the city's website.
Okay. Rebecca Fleury, Christine Zuzga, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
8:20.